Nancy, one of the more dynamic interviewees that we've had on the podcast, but of course, an enjoyable experience from start to finish. We got to touch on all things along her entrepreneurial journey, from co-founding 2 companies to meeting everyone at the right time, at the right place, and really allowing that to propel and magnify her to where she is today. But on top of that, being a keynote speaker, touching on topics such as self-empowerment, self-leadership, healthy work culture, accountability, you name it, Nancy is definitely speaking on it. And then on top of that, being an author. And I won't spoil the name of the book. I want you to tune in and I want you to go show her some love and enjoy it just the same for yourself. But really how she does not fit a mold. She does not fit a hierarchy. She is too outspoken, even as she calls it, a self-proclaimed weirdo. And for some that may have a negative connotation, but she fully embraces it, loves it, and does not think twice about it. So without further ado, enjoy episode 184, Against the Grain. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Down to Business podcast here with Tamar Turner. So look, I'm just loving the direction that we're moving in. I'm very excited at this point. We have already talked about our grant and what's kind of going on. And I'm excited to see who's going to, we've already gotten some applicants in and people kind of considering and just already asking kind of what's going on. And I'm really just excited for this one because it's in the purpose of it, and really why I did it the way I did it was really just in remembrance of my mom and really just wanting to give back, really just always remembering just the type of soul that she had and just how she always wanted to be there for others. And I feel like this is, in a sense, for the people who've been really following along the journey, that in year 3, I really felt like that is when I had my come to Jesus moment, in a sense. And it was just, I really realized why I was doing the podcast. I really realized what the mission behind it was. And a lot of it was what my mom did. So very just honored to be able to continue that in her name and really just to be able to, bless a business owner and entrepreneur out there. So the show must go on, though. Everything must continue. And that really starts with Nancy here today. So I have to really give a big shout out to her team for getting her scheduled, for following up with me, working around my schedule, and really just making this interview happen. And I appreciate her joining, appreciate her connecting me beforehand. So definitely excited for the interview. So Nancy, how are you doing today? How's everything on your end?
Absolutely wonderful. It's Thursday. That's real close to Friday. I can't complain about that. And I'm really happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you said that. And absolutely, the pleasure is ours. But I'm glad you said that because somebody was actually coming up to me today. He let out a big sigh. And I said, man, please don't do that. We're almost to Friday. You can't complain when it's Thursday, Friday Junior, as some people call it. So very excited for the weekend, a long weekend at that. So I'm definitely going to take advantage of all of that. Now, let's get down to business. No pun intended. So I know that we're going to have some people tapping in from your side. I know we're going to have some people tapping in from my side, but we're also going to have my favorite newcomers along the way. People probably finding out about the both of us for the first time. So I love that just the same. But to bring everybody up to speed, give everybody an even playing field and put them on the same page, can you, one, just tell us a little bit about yourself? And then can you, two, just tell us what brings you on the Down to Business podcast today?
Yeah. So I'm Nancy Lyons. I live in Minneapolis. I'm a founder of, I'm one of the co-founders of an experience design and technology consultancy called Clockwork. We also have another company that I'm one of the founders of called Tempo, and it's a agile studio so Clockwork works with the enterprise and solves big, gnarly problems with technology and strategy and change enablement. And with large companies, and then Tempo serves small, mid-size, and startup companies and nonprofits. I'm also an author. I've written a couple of books. My most recent one is called Work Like a Boss. I have a speaking career that I enjoy very, very much. I travel all over doing keynotes about self-empowerment, self-leadership, accountability, entrepreneurism, and women in leadership, and how to foster and create intentionally healthy work cultures. So I love that part of my life. And I'm a self-proclaimed weirdo, and I'm happy with that too. So I think the thing that brings me on here is I've been talking to a lot of folks with different, podcasts, different angles, and I appreciate these conversations because I learn something every time. So it's a mix of, my marketing team obviously wanting me to have conversations like this, but I enjoy it because I've been meeting some fascinating humans that I learn from too. And I had a chance, as you saw when I tried to connect with you on LinkedIn, to, do a little digging about you. And I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us.
Absolutely, and you're already a woman who wears many hats, so I can definitely appreciate that, and I love kind of what's going on in the direction that you're moving in. So, out of everything that you just named, I could really run down the list of everything, and you would probably even have to remind me of a couple of things. What came first? What really did you get your start with? What really was your interest in everything growing up? Because I hear a few things in there, but I also hear how they can all kind of be tied together, how they can all work together, but how also they can all be kind of a branch of one another under one larger entity. So, of everything that you do, of everything that you're involved in, where did you really get your start in this business world and entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. Well, I think, it was a number of things. I think I've been working in the space of technology for 26 years. And I look about 14, but I'm not. I got my start because totally unexpectedly. And I think all great careers, so many great careers are accidents, right? Like if you're open to a happy accident, it can change your life. And I think that's definitely what happened to me. I was pursuing a career in the arts. That didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So I started, so I sort of branched out from there and started to pursue video production. And it just wasn't for me. It wasn't moving fast enough. There wasn't a lot of change in the space. And so then I started to explore technology, and it all started because I started to teach myself how to code. But then I very deliberately, very intentionally went to find organizations that I could work inside of that would challenge me and teach me things I didn't know and help me get my training on the job. And I did. And so I met my business partners. They had started an internet service provider. They started building websites for commercial clients in 1995. I started working for, right? Yes. How old are you, Tamar? Just tell me.
Well, I was born in '96, so I'll be
Okay,
20.
so that tells you exactly what we're working with here. Like you've grown up with the internet, and I was on the early internet. So I started to get into technology when the internet started to become mainstream. And before you were born, there was this place that I'm sure you've heard of called AOL. Like I remember when AOL was, the social web, really. And so much has changed, but so much has stayed the same. So much of those early days looks the same. So the entrepreneurial thing came about because I met the right people who became my business partners. I also realized that I was not your typical leader, that corporate was probably not the place for me, because I was too outspoken. I moved too quickly. I can't manage bureaucracy. And I have big ideas, but I also think that that self-proclaimed weirdo thing. I mean, even in my LinkedIn profile, I call myself a rebel because I think we are not all cut from the same cloth, and that's what makes opportunity thrilling, right? That's what makes business interesting. And I think that so many organizations are just too homogenized to recognize innovation, big ideas, and super talented people right under their noses. And I just knew that, my business partners and I wanted to build a place where we wanted to work that embraced divergent thinking and challenging ideas and new technologies. And that's what we did.
That indeed, because in that, just listening to you and really just even trying to just think about really what you were saying, like the bigger picture behind it is that, it's hard to do really what you and your business partners did. It's hard to recognize, it's hard to be that rebel. It's hard to go against the grain, be that outlier, be that not even necessarily bad apple, but just be the one that looks a little bit different in the bunch because nobody likes to stand out or be called or be considered weird or strange or just wow, why is everybody kind of look almost like a Where's Waldo type thing? But it's just like we need that in the world too, because if everything was just against the grain, if no tradition was ever broken or if nothing was ever stopped, started, revamped, anything like that, it would be really plain, I think, in my opinion. It would be really predictable. So the fact that you were one just able to recognize that you weren't you weren't trying to go the homogenized, right? You weren't just trying to keep it plain, as we kind of call it now. You were really just trying to be that outlier in a sense, or you were trying to recognize, hey, this is a need, or this is a one, or we can change this here, or we can do this there. I think that that's important. And I think the fact that you had people that were willing to back your play in a sense, that's just as important too, because it's not easy standing out. It's not easy being that rebel. It's not easy. And it's not easy when you're doing it by yourself or within low numbers, because how easily that corporate world can pull you right back in, or can just make
Mm-hmm.
it feel like it's not that important or your issue is not that pertinent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that you guys still continue to stay steadfast and stay true to your beliefs, that's even more important. Now, everybody can't go. Some things along the way, some people may have been lost, some ideas may have been lost in translation or anything of the sort. But the fact that you really capitalized on that and honed in on that, I had to take my hat off to that just the same. So I've talked to, I would say, a few authors now and on this podcast, and I'm always very interested in just their journey. One, from hearing them become best-selling to really hearing them maybe never wanting or never envisioning themselves writing a book to now all of a sudden having multiple under their belt. So for you personally, what was that journey like? Did you always know that you kind of wanted to get into the space of becoming a published author? Was this something that within your speaking journey you kind of always wanted to do, or did the opportunity kind of present itself? Obviously, I would make the assumption, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you enjoyed some part of this process. So can you just kind of walk us through what was that like? Because myself, I'm very interested in, before my career, my tenure, whatever you want to call it, is over, I definitely do want to write and publish in some capacity. But I'm always so very just curious about how everybody else kind of, walk that path. So what was that like for you?
Sure. Well, I think the interesting thing about writing is I've always enjoyed writing. It's always been, I was a communications minor. I was a theater major in college and a communications minor. And writing for myself was always something that I found not just joy, but sort of zen in, right? It was an act of mindfulness. And I always enjoyed memoir writing and creating stories from my experiences. So writing business books was not really on the agenda. I thought maybe I'd write a book at some point, but I didn't think that I would write a business book. And then in the context of the work, at one point, I don't know, it was about 10 or 12 years ago, I was doing a keynote in partnership with a colleague, and we stood up and we were talking about what it takes to cultivate a healthy culture. And there actually happened to be another author in the room whose publisher was there with them, and they came up to us afterwards and said, "That's a book. What you just that's my dog. That is not a book." And while I can usually count on him to be quiet all day long, occasionally he ruins my life in the middle of a podcast. I apologize. He doesn't move unless something like this is happening. I swear to God. Anyway, so he came up to us afterwards and he said, "That's a book. I'd like to publish it." He wanted us to go through the whole process of putting together the proposal so that they understood what the book would be. So we had to go through the whole exercise, but we kind of knew that their intention was, if we got to a place that made sense to them, that they would publish the book that we proposed, and they did. And that was through a company called Peach Pit, which, at one point, that publisher did a lot of technology and design books. And that book was about it was about managing digital product creation, but it was a human-centered approach to managing digital product. And that was published about 14 years ago. That process was interesting. I think I thought that the publisher would give us more direction and hand-holding. And they were sort of like, "Here's some money. You're on your own. Call us in 3 months. You better be done with a book," and so we were. And the second one I did a little differently. I worked with a different publisher that was local. I knew them. I tried to work with a ghostwriter. It didn't work because my voice wasn't captured. And I have a sense of humor that's important to me. It's part of who I am. And the ghostwriter tried too hard to be funny. And that did not work for me. And so I had to be done with that and just say, "Okay, I'm gonna do this." I worked with an editor that I've worked with on all my newsletters and stuff. And we made great progress, and she really understood me. And that, I sometimes tell people that the book Work Like a Boss was really a letter that I was writing to everybody I've ever worked with or will work with. And so it flowed out of me, because what I had started to see was work created it sort of work. I think that most workplaces beat out of us some of the reasons why we got into our careers in the first place. We forget our purpose, right? We don't feel connected to the work anymore. We feel like we are following a job. We're checking boxes in a job description. And it's why Fridays are so important, right? Because we just can't wait to be done. It's why we don't want to wake up in the morning on Mondays, right? We just want to keep sleeping. It's why Sunday nights we can feel sick to our stomachs. And it's because we forgot what seems so joyful and what we were so connected to when we started our careers in the first place, that excitement, that I'm going to change the world attitude, the energy of having influence, having power, trying new things, being challenged, taking a risk. And so I wanted to write a book about how important it is to remember that it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what your role is inside of an organization. It doesn't matter how big you have the power to make your work meaningful, to connect to your purpose. You can center yourself in your agency. You can always be curious. You can decide not to contribute to the negativity that, invades most workplaces. You cannot be toxic. Like, that is our power. It's not about the boss deciding this is how things are going to be. It's not about us having to be told. And what I found with that book after it was published and the subsequent keynotes that I've done is people feel recharged after they read it, after they, I just met with somebody yesterday who said they've read the book and it's dog-eared, and they refer to it when they need a charge or when they need, to remind their folks of their purpose. And it's an interesting book because everybody hates work, and it because after the pandemic, we're all in the midst of an existential crisis. Is this really what I want to do? Do I want to go into the office? Do I want to stay home? They can't tell me what to do. They don't pay me enough. And it's like, none of that really matters because we have to work, because we live in a capitalist society that requires us to generate income in order to pay for our lives. So how are we going to center ourselves in our power and connect to that work in a way that makes it more meaningful to us? It's not about where we work. It's about how we work. And how will we be seen and heard and valued? And how will we see and hear and value our colleagues and add value every day?
Do y'all hear the passion? I mean, man, that's amazing, because I'm a firm believer that we all have some value to add in some capacity. But I also am a firm believer that, as you said, sometimes we can get into something, we can do something, and we lose that true vision, or we truly lose sight as to why we really started this in the first place. Things can become compromised. We lose our drive, that fire and desire for it, or anything could happen. Maybe a traumatic experience, maybe just, you're living check to check. And sometimes you just know you have to show up regardless. And the experience just isn't what it is. You can find yourselves 5 years here, 10 years here, now 15, now 20. And then before you know it, you spent your whole career in this one place, in this one spot, kind of stagnant, not really doing what you wanted to do, until maybe, hopefully, God willing, that epiphany comes along, or something really happens that changes your trajectory in a sense. But no, I definitely do. I'm very curious, and I'm very interested now, because the title alone got me work like a boss. We love that when you hear that word, you just want to automatically, you kind of want to jump suit and fire suit. But no, I like hearing that, just because even as you kind of spoke to at the beginning of the journey, it just so happened about proximity. Somebody was around, somebody heard something, heard what y'all kind of had going on. And next thing you know, you put two and two together. You got four, you got a book, you got multiple books. And then here we are right now, really just passionate about it. So I love that for sure. Now, something else that you touched on earlier in the interview was women in leadership and women in power and everything like that. And I love the fact that you are passionate about that, are supporting that, and are encouraging that. So I want to take a deeper dive into that, just the same as we've kind of done with a little bit of everything that you do. But I want to kind of talk about it from two angles. One, what specifically do you do with encouraging and empowering other women that are in these roles or trying to step into these roles? But two, also, how did this work for you? Because, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what niche you're in, no matter where you are in the world, women are always just, they're always just considered at the bottom of that totem pole, or just have to fight a little bit harder just to get that equality, or just to get that same compensation, or get that same treatment. So for you, I could imagine that working your way up, especially with the mantras, with what you consider yourselves, with that rebel mentality, it's not the easiest thing to do. So what was your journey really like to becoming a woman in leadership, and a woman who wants to empower other women to do the same?
Sure. Well, I think, growing up in technology, especially early in my career, I was often the only woman at a table. And it was profound to me how I could be overlooked or talked over, and you've known me for 10 minutes. Do you think that I do well with that. Um, right. So it was sort of interesting to me how often it happened and how often I could say something and nobody would recognize it, but a gentleman in the room could say the same thing, and suddenly, he would have the best idea ever. So I was really aware, especially in the technology and also ageism. I told you earlier that I am, a well-seasoned entrepreneur. I've been through it. But I remember early on, I was just a recent college graduate who understood computers. And we had older business people who didn't understand the internet or computers, who wanted to impress upon us the need for gray-haired old men in the room, that in order for us to be taken seriously. So there's ageism on both sides of the equation. There was ageism in my early experience. Now I'm acutely aware of the fact that the internet is very young. The technology space is fueled by the young. And I sort of resent this idea that, your mom doesn't get technology or my mom doesn't get technology, because now I am the mom. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I grew up here. I probably know more about the workings of the systems that power our tech than my 17-year-old son, who is brilliant in his very own way. So as a woman, I witnessed it, I experienced it. But, I would say that I talk a lot about women in leadership because, first of all, representation matters. It's important for me to show up and be that person that I described earlier, that one who doesn't fit a mold. I don't wear the suits or the pumps or I don't wear makeup. I dress for the occasion, because it's not what I'm wearing that we should be focusing on. It's the substance that I bring. It's the competence in my, subject matter that I bring. And that's what should matter. So the speaking piece is just to remind women that we are trained differently. We are culturalized differently than men. And because of that, we tell ourselves different stories. But in addition to that, Clockwork, my company, has I live in Minneapolis. We all know what Minneapolis has been in the last few years. A focal point of controversy and tragedy. And that is not something that is lost on me. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to the state capitol with 800 Black entrepreneurs, Black business owners in the state of Minnesota to participate and be an ally in Black Entrepreneurship Day, because Minnesota has an issue, like many states have issues. We just had a giant magnifying glass put on us because we have unjust folks in our police department who acted out and murdered a man. But long before that man was murdered, I have, and Clockwork has, we started the Minnesota Tech Diversity Pledge to get companies thinking about what it takes to actually walk the walk of equity and inclusion, especially tech companies. We had 240 companies sign up for that. So it's not just women in leadership. It's not just BIPOC folks. It's, our world is better when we include the broad array of perspectives and talents and experiences and, viewpoints and backgrounds that from the communities that we serve. The work that we do serves the general population better. The software that we build is more successful if it reflects the communities that use it. So, and I think that is, still a reality that is hard for a lot of organizations to embrace, because it takes work to be true to those commitments. It's why we saw, after that period in time, we saw a lot of organizations step up and talk a big talk about DEI, but now it's a line item in a budget that they can back away from, that they don't have to remain committed to. And to us, it's core to who we are. And I would say the same thing about women in leadership. I show up in those spaces to remind women of how powerful they are, and of how important their ideas are, and of how white and old and male the business world remains, right? In spite of all the talk and all the work and all the progress, white old men are still driving. Too many of the buses that we are all on. And there's just so much data out there that suggests that women are brilliant leaders, that they produce more, that they deliver better. There's so many, there's data. I was just in a meeting the other day, and one of my colleagues, who is the CEO of another company, said, and as a Black woman, she said, Black women get shit done. If you want it done, give it to us and it will happen, and we'll bring everybody with us. So I think supporting that kind of energy is really what I have a passion for. How can I amplify the voices that are not heard, and how can I encourage the energy of the interested?
Gonna ruffle some feathers with that one, but I love every single second of it, man. I really think that that's so important. As somebody who, and more of my recent jobs, especially the one that I'm holding now, I've worked pretty much around a lot of women, and I've just kind of seen the fight that they have to do on a daily basis. That fight on the clock and off the clock, just the same, because even in the real world, it's a problem, and it's just it's mind-boggling, it's disheartening, but at the same time it lights a fire under you, and it lights a fire under supporters, because it's just like, look, things can be done, and the proof is there, so and so. But like you said, those buses are being controlled by the same demographic too often, and too many times is their word, or is their word just taking us bond, or is their word just taking us to what it is and what it is to be. And I'm just almost so interested as to when that aha moment is going to come, or when that epiphany comes, when start changing the drivers of some of these buses, or we throw some cars in the mix, or vans in the mix, or trucks in the mix, and really what's happening, the productivity that comes from it, the ideas, the revenue, the possibilities are really endless. So as somebody who champions that from a podcast perspective, as somebody who will always kind of support the minority voice, not even kind, but who will always support the minority voice in some form or capacity, I definitely take my hat off to you for everything that you're doing, especially in Minnesota specifically, because that's a long ways from where I am, but I definitely do understand. It really just goes to show that the fight must continue everywhere. A lot of my followers and a lot of the people who tap in with the podcast are East Coast. We got some Midwest, we got some West a little bit, maybe West Coast a little, just the same. But this is happening all over. And like you said, that magnifying glass may have come for this reason, but hey, let's focus on this, and this just the same, because these are still prevalent and relevant problems. So, Clockwork now. 9 times out of 10, when somebody comes across this brand, this business, your products, your services, or everything like that, what are they looking for? What are y'all doing for them? What do they need? For somebody who has never heard the word, well, I'm pretty sure everybody's heard the word clockwork in some capacity, but for some people who have heard the word and think it may mean one thing, but you guys are branded and have put another spin on it, what can they expect to really experience? What can they really expect to learn and be able to do after working with y'all?
I love that question. And I appreciate that question, because I think that we find ourselves sort of a victim of the needs of our clients, but we're a technology consultancy. So where we shine is helping clients identify problems, but in solving those problems using technology. For instance, right now we are working, and like I said earlier, Clockwork works with Fortune 5s and Fortune 1s on large, software development projects, on long-term strategy engagements. So to give you an example of what that could look like, a big complicated website with a ton of back-end functionality that serves up personalized, customized content to end users. So for instance, we did the city of Minneapolis's website. It was 300,000 pages of content. So that's one example. That was a year's engagement. And we worked with a partner on the back end for that. So we did the user experience architecture, we did the design, we did the content strategy, but we did not do the content management implementation. We're also working for a large manufacturing company on a sales enablement platform. We've done several of those. Sales enablement is a practice area for us. So we help our clients create better systems of collaboration, increase efficiency, increase productivity by getting the tools to sell effectively into the hands of the representatives that do that work all over the globe. So this particular engagement is going to be about a couple of years, and we're building this massive sales enablement tool that will move into dealerships for this particular product all over the globe. We did another one for Mercury Marine to empower their obviously there are some clients I can talk about and some clients I can't, and you just witnessed that. We did another one for Mercury Marine to empower an iPad heavy sales enablement platform that empowered all 15,000 sales reps all over the globe with the materials they need to have effective and successful conversations with their prospects. In addition to that, we build mobile applications. We also have a change practice, because when you enable software solutions, and I think so many organizations see this pretty regularly, when you put in place new technology, if you don't bring the people with you, the teams that manage that technology, if you don't bring those people with you, it is entirely possible that the technology will fail. And it happens time and time again. So we bring along change strategists to ensure that we are taking the people and the teams with us, and that we are also delivering solutions that don't just work online, but are also understood and can be managed going forward by those teams. Did you like that? The show must go on, man. You were gone, and I'm just going.
Okay, yeah, so we're good now. I think one of my laptops just completely self-destructed on me. I'm not really sure what's going on, so we're gonna close that one. But yeah, if y'all would have saw my face over here, because I did not know what was going on, what was happening, but she just still kept going. So I want to thank God for allowing that to happen. Let me just put this back on 1 second. But it was crazy because I could hear everything that you were saying, and I was just watching my screen go away, my mic go away, and everything was happening. But okay, I got you for sure. And what's so interesting to me about a lot of who I've been talking to in the tech space is that I feel like tech is just forever evolving. Like there's a lot of things happening. There's so much with AI now. Generative. I'm learning different terminologies. Generative AI, consumer AI. It's just a lot. And I feel like I've been reading so many newsletters. I've been on LinkedIn, crazy, subscribing to different people, trying to be in the know and stay in the know. But I also feel like these are things, and this is stuff that is just ever changing. It's stuff that is just one minute it could be this. Now we're on Chat GPT 7 or 8, or I see Google phasing out this, and people are in competition with that, and it's just so much to keep up with. So I say all of that to also say I want to pose a kind of a question to you, and maybe just kind of get your insight and the team's insight as to how do you guys continue to stay up with all of this? Is this just, do you have a team, or do you have individuals that's their role, or dedicated to kind of keeping up with the times, keeping up with the Joneses in a sense? Because you can go to sleep and this is the new software, this is the new technology. It's the same way with these apps, like you said, AOL. Some people don't even, my brother probably did. My little brother, he'll be 20 in 2 days. He probably doesn't know what really AOL is, more than like he thinks it's an email. Some people just have an AOL.com, like an email address. I always chuckle when I see people with @AOL, because it's just like, wow, you've had that for quite some time now. But you think about even the adaptation of the social media sites, Facebook and the Meta now, Twitter being called X, Instagram having threads on the side, TikTok is out here and about, and some things have kind of phased out just the same. So with being technology and with being consulting, how do you continue to stay with the times to ensure that you're always providing your clients with, the top of the top, the best of the best?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, our core values are such that they speak to exactly that, the requirement for humans to pursue this kind of career. So our core values are, we tell the truth and we keep our promises. And that really stemmed out of being software developers who really like to get stuff done, right? There's a lot of places that deliver vapor, that talk a lot, talk a good game, but the initiative can last far too long and you can get a whole lot of nothing out of it. We're not those people. We like to deliver. But in addition to that, we're curious. And I think curiosity is key, because, I talked to you about the start of my career, and it was a long time ago, before you were born. And I don't need to remember that after this conversation. I don't need to think about that ever again. I want to thank you for that. But it was before you were born. It was also before there were formal programs for computer science that was strictly applicable to the internet. It was before there were, the myriad of languages and platforms and stacks that technology worked with. And so the key to getting ahead in that space was really to be curious and be self-taught. And to this day, the most interesting people to me that we hire and work with are always the people who are curious and teaching themselves. Who, one of the questions we used to ask, it's not as well received anymore, but we used to say, what are you doing when you're not at work? What does your online life look like? Are you taking courses? Are you getting certified? Are you watching videos? Are you trying to code on your own? What does it look like? Because those are the people you want. The people that it's not part of your job description necessarily to want to hunger for more knowledge, to challenge yourself to try something new. And I think that's imperative to pursue a career in the space. I think, I always tease my staff and say, hey, I watch the TikTok. I know what the Z's are saying, right? What do the Z's say? They say, hey, that's not my job description. There's all those animated TikToks about, I'm sorry, Melinda, what were you saying to me? It's my lunch hour. I'm going to continue to eat my salad and be totally rude to you. And not on my watch, you're not. Because here's the thing. I don't make my staff work more than 40 hours a week. Okay. I don't ask for that. We are not a firm that says you're going to die on the vine and work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I'm going to, I'm going to berate you if I'm not getting this high productivity for you. But when you are working, I need you to be less concerned about the list that is your job description and more concerned about adding value and being curious enough to figure stuff out. Our additional values are we're fueled by challenge and we're adaptable because stuff changes, right? It's constantly moving, and we're helpful, right? We are interested in speaking in plain language. It's not our jobs to make technology mystical. It's our jobs to make it make sense and then apply it to a business problem in order to solve it. It's our job to know that somewhere in this process, we are not going to know what we're doing. Now, if I were a brain surgeon, you should be concerned if somewhere in the process I don't know what I'm doing. But because we are in technology, the beauty of technology is when you are under the hood, you are figuring it out, and no two initiatives are ever the same. No two opportunities are the same. No two problems are the same. No two engineers are the same. So they may not solve a problem the same way. So you have to bring those qualities, and you have to push yourself outside of what your job requires of you to really be the best in the business. The other thing that I think is important is if you want a career instead of a job, those words, I'm sorry, Melinda, I am going to eat my salad and be rude to you. I mean, it's okay to have boundaries, but don't be stupid. Invest in your career, right? Like, I'm all about mental health care. I'm all about flexible time. I'll never tell my staff where to work. I don't care if you work from under your bed, as long as the work gets done, right? I'm never going to be that person. But if your boundaries are costing you opportunity, if you're so stuck on your job description that you're missing a chance to prove yourself, then you're dumb. And that's the only thing I have to say about that.
Well said, because I'm definitely one of those believers too, where sometimes you just have to do things outside of the description, take initiative. And I feel like sometimes job descriptions can even be a fallacy or even just a trap, or it's just to see, hey, I told you you're responsible for this, and this. Well, let's just see if this comes along that's outside of the scope. Let's see if you'll step up. Let's see if you'll do something. And then, well, if you won't, then no, because part of where you want to be, part of where you want to go, part of where you want to move up to get that higher paycheck, those better benefits, or whatever it may come with, requires you to do things outside of what you may be comfortable doing, or do things outside of what that description says, or stay a little later sometimes. Or, I can't tell you how many times, even with the podcast, being a business owner, it's no different. If you have to do things all the time that you don't want to do, you have to be on other people's time. Sometimes you have to waste your own time. You have to take extra time. You have to devote time outside of work hours, outside of personal, outside of family, friends, everything like that, because the show, as you even just saw just now, the show must go on. If one laptop goes down, I can't just self-destruct and end the interview and curse everybody out. No, I gotta, okay, let me move this here, let me set up here, let me do this there. But you have to also be prepared for situations like that. And like you said, you can't let your boundaries cost you an opportunity, or cost you that next level, or cost you that next step, or some recognition, or anything of the sort. So I love that fact too, because it's just like, sometimes you're gonna have to get your hands dirty a little bit, to ask some questions, to not necessarily know right away, but in order to provide that best customer service, you say, okay, hey, I can't get this to you right now the way you may want it, but I promise, give me this amount of time, give me this, you give me that, I'll have something for you, and I'll have something for you, and then some. It's all about communication too. I think that that's a lost art these days when it comes to whether it be professional, whether it be core, we can talk corporate, whether it be personal, anything like that. It's just something that, people need to know. We're all in this together. We're all offering grace. We're all going through the world. We all just went through the pandemic. We're experiencing things. We're in jobs and places and spaces that we may not necessarily want to be or like to be. Just talk about it. Just let me know what's going on. Just keep me aware and abreast just the same. So I love the fact that you guys have taken that approach from it. And I think that that is going to continue to excel you above the rest, but also keep you in the know with everyone else, because it's hard out here. It's difficult out here. I'm doing so much reading on podcasts and what people are doing in technology and this and that, but y'all are a straight up technology consulting company. You have to know every single thing, because if somebody comes to you with a question, or somebody comes to you with something that they read or they heard, and you're kind of just sitting there like, I'm not really sure. Well, that their confidence is going to go, whoa, well, maybe I don't need to really be working with this company. You guys should be kind of telling me something. So I think that's a great way, a great approach for sure. And I'm excited to see kind of what's next. So kind of following that trajectory, we are big here on the podcast about just teasing and just figuring out what's going on. We love manifesting, we love supporting, we love doing all that things. But I love, because, and why I like doing this part is just because I know that we're going to have people who are coming along and introducing themselves to you for the first time, finding you on LinkedIn, finding the website, finding the social media, everything like that, but want to follow along the journey. Really like something that you said on here, if nothing more than the woman empowerment journey, or if nothing more than they got the book and now they're ready to work like a boss and do everything that they do like a boss. So is there anything that, as we continue to progress through the year, as we continue to move quarter two, halfway through, everything like that, that you guys are, even not even you guys more so, even I'll say Nancy, because we're talking about Nancy, we're talking to Nancy, so let's really get down to business with Nancy. But no, is there anything that, as we continue to progress through the year, that we can look forward to? Is there any new projects that you're kind of taking on, anything that has kind of come across the horizon that you're excited to debut? Now, obviously within reason here, like we don't have to spoil any surprises or any secrets or put out the unknown or the hidden just yet, but very interested just to see, kind of if there's anything on the horizon, anything that people can kind of be looking forward to.
Well, I appreciate that question. So there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is I'm working on my next book, and it is really about pushing back against conformity. And you sort of you are reminding me about the generational conversations that, like you just said, that you totally get what I said about about putting in the extra time, doing the extra work, like as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're doing that all the time. And I would even go a step further and say, as an entrepreneur, you're never off the clock. You are never not thinking about your business. You're never not thinking about hustling, right? And I've been doing it, like we've already established, I'm probably old enough to be your parent. In fact, I am. And I've been doing it that long. And I still hustle as hard. I'm trying to think bigger. I try to think more strategically. I try to delegate, but the hustle never ends. And so this idea that there are jobs, where, well, you only pay me this much. But the other thing is the idea that it's generational is interesting to me, because you're a Z, right? Are you a late millennial or a Z?
I'm a 96er, so yeah,
you're a
they
Z.
put me on the cusp.
You're on the cusp. Yeah, we'll go there. I'm a Gen Xer, and here's the deal. It used to be that the Gen Xers and the Boomers were saying, "Why are they so lazy and entitled?" Right? And now it's more your generations are louder. Now it's more the Zs and the Millennials saying, "Get off my back." Boomers are old, Gen Xers are out of touch, and we're going to do what we want. And I would say it's not a generational thing. We all want the same things. We want challenge and opportunity. We want to be seen and heard. We want to be compensated for our value. And I think some of that comes with a mindset shift. The Boomers are not trying to destroy the Zs. The Gen Xers are not trying to destroy anybody. One could actually argue that Gen Xers were less than conforming right out of the gate. I've never worn a pantsuit to work. It's like my parents did, but I was a slacker right? When I started on my internet career. So I wore jeans and flannel, and that was about as far as it went. The rest of me was working. We all want the same opportunities. Maybe boomers and Xers, are resentful because young people are learning they get to ask for it. They get to have boundaries. But I think there's a happy medium. And I think that I want to talk more in this new book about that, about the way people work, about the way people collaborate, about the opportunities that are ahead of us if we stop trying to place blame and shame and be weird. About how the power really is in the hands of the people. It's less hierarchical and it's more distributed. And I think there's an opportunity for us to figure out how to wield that power in healthy ways. And how we push back on conformity and really bring, in my case, your inner weirdo, right? Like, how do I show up my best self really? Not a toned down version of me that will be acceptable to the leadership team, but really, how do I create a job, an opportunity, a space where I feel safe enough to challenge myself to be truly innovative? So I want to write a book about that. As far as Clockwork is concerned, we are embracing AI and positioning ourselves on the forefront. We figured out all the internet stuff, and we work with massive companies on digital transformation initiatives. And AI must be a part of those now. So, we began an AI community of practice. We're really examining how we use these systems internally, and we're beginning to consult with our clients. But here's the deal. The beauty about the technology space is you said earlier, you want people to be able to come to you and you kind of have to know what you're talking about. Yes and no. The reality is we also have to have the ego strength to be able to say, I don't know, but I know how to figure it out. And those are the consultants clients should trust, because we are living in a time where it's real hard to say, I don't know. And people are expected to know because the answers are supposedly at our fingertip, but the answers are not cookie cutter and they don't apply across the board to everybody. And so it is incumbent upon an organization like us to commit to AI, to commit to evolution and innovation, but also be prudent about how we move forward with it and be honest about what we know and what we don't know, but have deep enough and meaningful enough relationships with our clients to be able to explore that new space in partnership with them. And so AI is a big part of our future plans. We're doing some really cool, innovative stuff with AI with a couple of our clients right now that in a few months I'll be able to tell you about. And I'm super excited about what it means for people being able to focus on what they love more, right? And tedious, administrative, painful tasks can be outsourced. I also think, the question is AI going to take my job? No, but get comfortable with AI, because the people who are comfortable with AI are going to take your job. And I think that's an important distinction. And soft skills, you've smiled at me throughout this interview and it keeps me comfortable in your podcast. Knowing that your guests need that human interactivity from you is a skill that a computer will never have. And I think we've spent a lot of time focused on math and physics and, and don't get me wrong, education is important and focusing on those things is important, but we spent no time focusing on soft skills and reasoning and negotiation and empathy and understanding and sensitivity. And a computer will never understand sentiment. We can gauge it by language, but a computer can't read visual cues. A computer doesn't know what success looks like on a person's face when they achieve their objective, engaging with a digital product. So people are going to be necessary for the foreseeable future. And that doesn't mean we're not going to see robots. It doesn't mean we're not going to have competition for manufacturing jobs. It doesn't mean that some blue collar opportunities are going to go away. In those instances, I want to see more organizations upskill. I want to see more companies invest in programs that bring people from the mines to a computer where they learn to code. I think big companies right now have the opportunity to really set examples for what the future can hold and how they can make it a reality.
Man, I like that just too, because I feel like when AI was first introduced, it really put a lot of fear into people, and it really just had people on the up and up, and didn't really. A lot of people were just going the mainstream route and reading what the media wanted us to see in all these outlets, and it's just like like you said, when you really take a deeper dive into things, they can't, like you said, sentiment, emotion,
Mhm.
smiles, just recognizing cues and everything like that. There has to be something. Robots just can't come in and just wipe out everything. It's just not.
Mhm.
It's not possible. It's not. We have to just be a little bit more realistic than that. But I feel like when once people hear it from a different perspective or think about it a different way, because something that kind of opened my eyes to this, and I really haven't looked at it the same way since, is people were telling. I've talked to a couple of entrepreneurs on the podcast, and they were pretty much telling me that, hey, AI has really been all around us for
Oh
years.
yeah.
Whether
Oh
we
yeah.
realize it or not, whether we wanted to coin it that, whether we wanted to term it that, or whether it wanted to make this big mainstream thing, it's really been here, but it's starting to develop more now. The capabilities are starting to enhance, improve, increase. He kind of compared it to like a game system thing.
Mhm.
You think about the original. I'm an Xbox guy, so you think about the very first Xbox, and
Mhm.
now what you can do with some of the Xboxes now, it's just like, wow, it's night and day, black and
Mhm.
white, different. So I love that perspective, one, to see what you're trying to do, because I'm excited for this next book. I'm excited for just the mindset. I'm excited for where it goes, who it inspires, who it motivates, that fire that it is just going to continue to light under people. But two, just from the perspective of what y'all are trying to do, because I think you made an amazing point about saying I don't know is hard.
Mhm.
But saying I don't know, but being able to follow up and say, but I can figure it out, or I can make it happen, will give you one. Because people can just say I don't know, leave it at that. That'll leave a sad taste in your mouth. People could also not know, act as if they know, and the results will speak for themselves. They may not speak in that moment, but you'll
Mhm.
realize after a while that, wow, maybe they were faking the funk, or maybe that really didn't make any sense, or you may find out on your own what the real was. So I
Mhm.
just love the way that when you approach that and explain that, because it also speaks to the authenticity of you, your brand, and what you guys are also promoting, and how you guys are helping people, and really just that comfort that you bring to people. It's not about really the dollar. It's not about really coming to us to work with Clockwork. No, it's about knowing that when you do come to us, though, this seamless and amazing experience that you'll have, and the unforgettable. I worked with Nancy. She was just amazing. She was just that true rebel. She really just empowered us, but she really made sure that she got the job done. And while there
Mhm.
was time to laugh and joke, there was also time to get serious and make it happen. And she had an amazing balance between the two. So before we wrap things up, before I tell people where they can kind of tap in with you from the website, social media, everything of the sort, do you feel like there's anything that we haven't touched on today that you want to kind of leave people with? Any last words for business owners, entrepreneurs, creatives, people who may come across this episode in any capacity? Is there anything that you would like them to know out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only parting words that I can even think about right now are I keep coming back to this idea that what's happening right now, this moment in time with technology and our view toward the future, reminds me a lot of what was happening when I started my career. When people were like, "Oh, the internet's going to take our jobs and e-commerce is going to destroy the planet, and we're not going to have stores." Okay, that might have come to fruition. Stores look different and they're trying to figure out if there's room for them. But it's also a time of huge possibility and huge opportunity. And so I think what's happening right now is going to change the world the way the internet changed the world. And you can either be part of it or you can be afraid of it. And the people that were afraid of the internet are the people whose stores are closing. And the people who were a part of it are people like me who are now old with storied careers, and and are still having fun. And I think that's what's sitting in front of us. Do you want to get on this boat and ride the wave of opportunity, or do you want to be afraid and get left behind? And I think that I think that the future is going to be even more brilliant and amazing than everything that we've witnessed, if the politicians don't mess it up. But that's another podcast, Tamar. That is another podcast.
Well, we are certainly due for another follow up, one where my laptops will behave as exactly the way they should. But no,
Okay.
you're absolutely right. It's really, which side of the street are you trying to be on? What are you really trying to do? Because I could imagine you place that analogy in there like that, and people are thinking like, wow, like, well, back then the internet probably was scary. It probably was, you didn't know what was around that corner. And now look at it. Look at how it's been able to benefit so many people, and look at how those people who didn't adapt it and maybe kind of transition to it, look at kind of where they are, what they're doing, or maybe not as tech savvy, or what's this, or kind of what's going on, or what's happening. So I'm very interested to see that it's already really been interesting to see the direction that AI has been moving in just the few years that it's kind of been introduced to us. But 5 years from now, who knows what things will look like? Who knows how things will be operating, what will be happening, but what side of the street you'll be on? That's the ultimate question here. So Nancy, I thank you just for the time. I thank you for everything that you've done, for just coming on here, for just the message that you have, for the books that you've written, for all of just the energy that you're putting out, for everything that you're doing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I know it's not easy over there just the same, but just continue to be that advocate, and continue to empower and continue to strengthen those voices that need to be heard, because there's a lot of them out there. And I think you may have even lit a fire under someone else, because someone in a totally different area than you, someone maybe out of the country, maybe going through the same exact thing, and may have not have known how to approach it, or what to do, or what to say, or may have thought that they were alone. But here they are, they know that they have an ally way across way. So before we officially close out, can we just get I know you kind of touched on some things too throughout the interview, but can we just get all your social media, best places to reach you if people want to kind of find out what you have going on, connect, order the books, everything like that? Just give us everything that you have.
Sure, I appreciate that. So you can find my company Clockwork at clockwork.com. Pretty straightforward. You can find our studio Tempo at madebytempo.com. You can find me at my website, which is nancylyons.com, and you can find out all about my speaking, and my books are linked there. But you can also go to worklikeaboss.com, and that'll link out to all the booksellers that carry the book. You can also just request it from your favorite independent bookseller. You can find me on all the social media. Remember, my name is Nancy Lyons. When people see N Lyons, they say nylons. So my Instagram handle, my X handle, even TikTok, although it's a 0, is nylons. It's nylons everywhere. Except for LinkedIn, which is just Nancy Lyons. So you can find me, just Google me. If you Google me, you can find me. Big as life.
All right, now there it is. I love that. I love that. So no, thank you again, really, just for all the time, all the insight, for what you provided to my audience, to your audience. And then I know we're going to have some newcomers along the way. So very excited to continue to tap in with you, Clockwork, Tempo, see everything that you have going on, publish some more books, inspire some more people. And I know the sky is the limit. The possibilities are endless, and Down to Business is here to support every step of the way. So to everybody who continues to tap in with us, everybody who joined us live for the interview or will come across this in some capacity, one, thank you for bearing with us for these. As soon as I end this interview, me and this laptop are going to have a very important meeting. Just know that I'm tapping it right now, looking right at it. But no, thank you to everybody for being patient with us, continuously staying tapped in with us, supporting us. I love y'all. This has been another episode of the Down to Business podcast, here with Tamar Turner. All right.